Hello, you're on Bespoke Unit, I'm CP, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Avo Improvisation 2020. First of all, a quick shout out to Davidoff Cigars and Eddy for sending us these. We've been really enjoying them for the purposes of this review. As per usual, we'll be using the Bespoke Unit Cigar Formula, a quantifiable review matrix. You can download a blank copy to do your own reviews, just check in the description below, and you can download the final PDF version of this so you can compare it as I go through the review. As you may have guessed, the Avo Improvisation 2020 is a limited edition release for the year 2020. This intriguing Avo blend was produced by Tabadom in the Dominican Republic, who also produce Davidoff cigars. In fact, if you go to the factory, you'll see that they have two Guerra, one which produces just Davidoff cigars and the other one for Avo. This is of course hecho a mano, fully handmade, made with long leaf and using an accordion bunching style. It consists of an Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper, which is why it has this lovely creamy texture thanks to the natural cloud coverage in that country, and it uses a Semilla 151 seco binder, Semilla meaning seed in Spanish. The filler consists of 3 Dominican leaves, which are San Vicente ligero, piloto ligero, and San Vicente seco. It also includes a Peruvian piloto visus. If you don't know what those mean, just head to the description below and there's a guide on how cigars are made and the different parts of the plant. Or you can also watch our full Davidoff documentary, which will just pop here above my head, which will give you a full breakdown of these particular leaves as well. The Avo Improvisation 2020 was produced in one single format, which is a 6.5 by 50 Toro. There are only 4,400 boxes of 14 cigars in production. Before we go any further, I'd just like to talk about the way these cigars were stored for the purposes of this review. In order to ensure proper standardization, we store all our cigars for review in the exact same way. They spend most of their time in this Boveda acrylic humidor that you can see behind me, and for a minimum of a 3-week period at 69% RH. This ensures that they are all at the same level, that they've all had the same treatment, and they are properly acclimated and prepared for the review. And I monitor them regularly using a Boveda butler. Let's jump straight in with the look and feel. As you can see, it has a lovely creamy wrapper, which has this distinctive praline shade, very distinctive of a Connecticut. The roll is consistent and relatively smooth. There are a couple of bumps I did notice on a couple of the cigars that I had. I don't know about Paul. They're also, as you can see, maybe a touch wonky, but overall well constructed, nice firm spring to it in general. There's a nice, as you can see as well against the light, an oily sheen, which is very pleasant to the eye. And the veins, there are a couple of visible veins, but they're not particularly rustic. They're relatively refined in general. Otherwise, the aromas that I got off the foot before I cut this was a little bit of brandy butter, so quite caramelized, custardy, creamy, with a little bit of booziness in the background, as well as some spicy cinnamon and an additional spice of nutmeg. Next, we have the Prelight, which is the pre-smoking experience. This is just after cutting the cigar. I experienced a very nice draw that was balanced and didn't have too much resistance, but not too little either. You also have a relatively rich flavor coming from the head, like so, before it's lit, with some aromas which consist of butterscotch, so like the brandy butter, but without the booziness that I mentioned earlier, terracotta, so a touch of dried earth, and that cinnamon spice is coming back in again. Of course, the Prelight is followed by the tasting notes and the palate in general. So in the first third, I experienced a combination of butterscotch, so again, this creaminess that I experienced in the Prelight with a touch of vanilla, toasted almonds, so there's a little bit of nuttiness there, slightly char-grilled, and cardamom, which was a surprising but very pleasant spicy note that had this slight minerally metallic flavor. This was particularly prevalent in the second third, but transitioned into a touch of what I would describe as pennies. Indeed, they were reminiscent of copper metal, which, although it may sound a bit strange, is extremely satisfying and gives you this minerally metallic flavor that accords beautifully with what I also identified as char-grilled thyme. So you can just imagine some thyme placed on a barbecue, slightly cooked, slightly grilled on the edges, and giving you this cooked aromatic flavor. Meanwhile, there was also a malt flavor that I would relate to either producing beer or whiskey, this lovely cereal warm flavor that just accompanied the aromatic and the mineral flavors of the pennies and the char-grilled thyme. And of course, we resulted in the final third that consisted of cedar, which interestingly was present in the previous 2/3 but was never distinctive in its own right. Instead, it accorded with other flavors in those two sections of the cigar. Here it was very much prevalent, it was on its own, it was proud, and it was accompanied by some spiciness. In this case it was nutmeg, as well as a touch of dried earth. As I mentioned before, there was some terracotta in the Prelight experience. This was present again in the final third. Overall, we had an intricate smoking experience. There was some complexity within all these notes that offered different flavors that you could identify and enjoy, and they would accord together. The mouthfeel was overall very smooth, as you can expect from a Connecticut cigar, that nicely coated the palate with a creaminess. The astringence, which we could refer to as the dryness of the cigar, was nice and balanced. It wasn't too tart, nor did it produce too much salivation. This relates to the overall palate stimulation, which talks about how the cigar stimulates different parts of the tongue when you hold the smoke into your mouth. Here it was nicely balanced, a nice spread of stimulation throughout the tongue, but it did focus slightly towards the front and the lateral fronts as well. This was probably due to the percentage of San Vicente. That being said, the piloto should stimulate the back of the tongue as well, given that it is a slightly more spicier tobacco. This naturally leads on to the life cycle, which was overall very developed. Here we had a lovely evolution, a story that was being told by the cigar that was taking us through a variety of aromatic, mineral and spicy notes. There was nothing too heavy. It was an overall mild cigar that enjoyed presenting us a variety of lingering flavors that accorded and communicated and interplayed with each other throughout every third. This resulted in a very pleasant, lingering finish that remains on the tongue and can be enjoyed very easily with a beverage or snack, which we'll be covering later. And finally, the residual scent, something that I always like to cover in a cigar review. In this case, it left a wonderful smell in the room that just lingered. Normally, I'm not a fan of stale cigar smoke, but in this case, it wasn't stale at all. It was more reminiscent of incense and provided a lush and fragrant note and aroma in the room. Let's talk a little bit about the combustion. So as I mentioned in the Prelight draw, the resistance, the draw was nice, consistent, ideal, a little bit of resistance but not too much either. In this case it remained consistent throughout the entire smoke, and the temperature was very cool and very pleasant on the palate. The angle and the ash backbone, this is the quality of the burn in this sense and how strong the ash is on the end of the cigar. I admit were a little bit of a disappointment, but anyone who's familiar with Avo cigars know that they tend to have their own little charm about them. This isn't always a bad thing. As long as the flavor is there, everyone's happy. As you can see, it's a little bit wavy here on the foot. It will correct itself somewhere near the second third, which is what I experienced with the previous cigars, but it may need touching up again towards the final third. The backbone, meanwhile, as you can see, I have a little bit of ash. I could probably get an inch, but then without any warning, it will plop off and fall into my lap, which is exactly what happened earlier this morning. Finally, our last scored consideration is the overall experience, which takes into consideration the presentation, occasion, and value for money of the cigar. First of all, I'm very fond of these bands. Avo do produce some very exquisite, elegant bands, which are great for a variety of different occasions. Here they've juxtapositioned the black and the cream craft paper with some copper metal, which looks very pleasing to the eye and works well against the wrapper of the cigar. Unfortunately, the only problem with Avo wrappers, if anyone's familiar with these cigars, is that they're very difficult to remove, and sadly you'll probably rip it to shreds rather than being able to save it for any kind of decoration or collection that you may have. The box, I don't have the box to hand myself, but Paul does, and he's shown me photos and he's shown me on a video. It looks very interesting. It's quite a change from the usual type of cigar box. Here it's a wooden cedar tray with an acrylic cover that can be removed entirely. It has a nice display value to it and can be used for dishing out cigars at an event or presenting to friends. In terms of the cigar's value, it's an excellent entry-level premium cigar. It comes at about $16 per stick, but you do have to buy a whole box. In most cases, it's very rare to find these available as singles unless you go into a local shop. As for the occasion, I think this is a very versatile cigar. You can use it casually, you can enjoy it at home, but because of the elegant presentation of the bag and the elegant flavor profile, this is something that you will be able to take out to formal events such as weddings or perhaps even posh clubs or lounges, as well as enjoy with some close friends in a barbecue when they let us do that again. As with all our reviews, we'll be ending this with a couple of pairing observations. Of course, this is not scored, but we do keep it on the cigar formula in the bottom right hand corner for your reference. First of all, in terms of food and snacks, I would firstly recommend fudge being an excellent example of what to pair this with. Fudge has a nice caramel, smooth mouthfeel. It has some vanilla notes, a little bit of spice, which will pair wonderfully with this beautiful cigar. You could also consider a custard-based dessert. Here I noted custard cream, which is a classic English biscuit, but you could probably use a variety of different snacks or desserts that are based on custard as well. And finally, I chose Rocher chocolate. Now, the most well-known Rocher chocolate is probably Ferrero Rocher, but in France we have other brands such as Suchard, which have this nice mix of nuttiness, praliné, and chocolate. I would go for the milk one rather than dark chocolate. Dark chocolate perhaps being a little bit too aggressive for this delicate cigar. As for beverages, I would consider something like a lightly peated whiskey or perhaps something playful like a cool Isla. Alternatively, you could opt for a Campbelltown, which is a little bit more floral as single malt whiskies go. If you prefer rum, you could perhaps have a Flor de Caña 12. I'd go for Flor de Caña because it has a nice, natural, mild flavor that would accord quite nicely with the cigar. Meanwhile, if you're a coffee lover, you could go for a café au lait or a latte. I would suggest something like this rather than an espresso because then you have the milk that offers this nice accord and pairing of these creamy flavors that would work nicely together. Alternatively, I had earlier with the previous cigar a Rooibos from Daman Frère, which is called a carrot cake, which is an infusion of various herbs and spices, including ginger, almonds, as well as cinnamon, which has this wonderful gourmand flavor, though is quite light and pairs very nicely with this cigar. And right now, I'm enjoying a Côte de Provence Rosé, which makes me realize that this is probably a cigar that you would want to consider with a mineral wine, a mineral flavored wine. This Côte de Provence has a little bit of fruitiness, a little bit of citrus, but mostly an accent on those mineral soil flavors. This goes very nicely with this cigar, and you could probably consider sparkling wines such as a champagne, perhaps from the Côte de Blanc region. To summarize, the Avo Improvisation 2020 is a wonderfully aromatic cigar with notes of spices, minerals, and metals, which are very pleasant and combine nicely together to tell you a very intriguing story. This is a good value entry-level premium cigar. At $16 per stick, you have a very, very lavish experience. Definitely worthwhile for the investment, and you probably want to make a rush on that given that this is just a limited edition for this year. Overall, on the cigar formula, as you can see, it earned 85 out of 100. For us, that is a very easy 5-star review. As much as 85 might not sound much compared to the other publications out there, for us we use a full 100 scale and then we equate it to a star value afterwards. Here this is a very easy 5-star, this is a good quality cigar, and it's definitely one worth putting on your radar. That's all from me today. I'm CP. I hope you enjoyed this video. If for more on cigars and other men's lifestyle subjects, head to bespokeunit.com or head to our YouTube channel, check out what we do, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that little bell for notifications. Until next time, Take care.